Welcome to our broadcast, brought to you by Dell Expert Network. I'm your host, Kenna Johnson from the Channel Company. Today we'll explore how the latest AI advancements are reshaping industries and opening new opportunities for MSPs. Joining me for this insightful discussion is Dr. Brons Larson from Dell Technologies. Delighted to have you with me.
I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today as well.
Let's get started with segment 1, AI 101. Brons, what is AI and Gen AI in simple terms?
There's two flavors of AI, two modalities that it can be operated in, and they're known as analysis and synthesis. Analysis is more traditional AI. It's where you have a sensor system that's ingesting data. You can imagine like a camera on an autonomous vehicle, and it's ingesting information, and then that AI system analyzes the images from that sensor to produce some sort of insight, like maybe recognize a stop sign and classify it as different from a speed limit sign. And it's based on whatever information has been used to train up that particular model. But every model that's designed to do analysis can actually just be inverted and allow it to do synthesis. And what I mean by that is, imagine you had a model that if it's able to understand what a stop sign looks like to be able to classify it, it has the elements to then create a stop sign or synthesize a stop sign or generate a stop sign, which is known as generative AI. So that's where you could actually say, please generate a stop sign, and it'll actually produce an instantiation of a stop sign for you. It can be applied to text, so you can ask it to create answers, which is what people think of with Copilot and ChatGPT, where it's generating a response. Maybe one way to think about these two is also something that you've been using for a long time, video games. If you think about the football video game, Madden Football, there's a physics model in there for how football behaves when thrown in the air. And you could use that model to analyze a football flying through the air and say, based on where it is and how it's moving, I know where it was thrown from, the angle it was thrown, the velocity it was thrown at, and where it's going to land. You could analyze the situation by taking images or information about the ball in flight. But you can flip that same model around and input parameters, this velocity, this direction, this azimuth, and it will synthesize and generate a football flying through the air according to that model. And that's what goes on in video games when you play it. So people have been using both AI and generative AI probably for decades without necessarily even knowing it.
Can you explain the different ways of AI and how it will impact industries and MSPs?
If you think about any AI system, which is really just designed to automate some process, often it's something a human can do, but it doesn't have to be. There's kind of 4 elements. It's really pretty common sense, 4 elements that you need to make the system operate and do what humans do. You have to be able to perceive, learn, abstract, and reason. And what I mean by that, the first perceiving is you need some sort of sensor to take in data. So a camera, with the example I had of the autonomous vehicle. But it needs to be able to actually learn from that data to be able to make decisions. So learning is a key aspect of AI as well. But it shouldn't just learn what it's seen before. It should be able to actually operate and abstract to things it's never been exposed to. Like imagine if you trained up on an autonomous driving system to recognize a baseball, a football, a volleyball, so that if it saw one of those crossing a road, it might say, whoa, there might be a little kid chasing after it. I need to stop. But what if a new type of ball appears that it wasn't trained up on? AI systems as they are today, they tend to sort of fail, and they might just think, oh, misclassified as a leaf, and drive right through it, potentially causing problems. So the abstraction, that third tenet, is something humans can do very well, and that's something AI systems need to do as well. And the last is reasoning. Once you actually properly identify or create the intelligence about what we're looking at or what you're trying to understand, there has to be actions taken, like stop the car, or keep going if it's not a threat. So the perceiving, learning, abstracting, and reasoning are the 4 tenets of AI. And the waves of AI, there's 3 of them, have evolved to advance and add each of these different characteristics. So wave 1 is the oldest. It's been around, well, officially hundreds of years, but really more in earnest since about the 1960s. And it's just based on rules. It's only really got the perceiving of getting some input data and then reasoning. And it's just human knowledge. It takes the rules, which we already know, and it just encapsulates those in an algorithm. You can think of like an ATM machine. It's something a human used to do. There were tellers in banks where you'd go to deposit money, take out money, check your balance. In ATM, we knew the rules. It was very deterministic. So we encapsulated those with a series of automated, tasks that allow you to go to an ATM machine and do something that a human used to be able to do. I already mentioned video games. I mean, the game of checkers, we know the rules, how checkers work. We know that they can only move diagonally and they can't move where there's a piece. You could jump only diagonally. You can't move backwards unless you're kinged. So being able to automate those rules allows us to create video game AI systems that can play against you and follow those simple rules. But what happens if you don't know the rules? And that's where the learning concept really comes into play. And if you don't know the rules, you don't know the model, one thing you can attempt to do is gather a bunch of data about the situation and pass it into a machine, which hopefully will learn the model for you, learn the rules. And that's the second wave of AI, and it's based on statistics. It's the stochastic processing. It's what we think of today with neural nets and deep learning. ChatGPT and generative AI is mostly in this domain. And it's where you can actually pass in data, like a bunch of pictures of a cat, a bunch of pictures of a dog, and it figures out the features of those. And it can then be used to classify a dog versus a cat, or in the case of generative AI, it can generate a dog or a cat. But it doesn't abstract very well. So if you then only train it up on dogs and cats and you presented the system with a fish, it might just fail or wrongly classify the fish as a dog or a cat. It just can't think beyond what it's been trained up on. And that's really where the third wave of AI comes in, is this idea of abstraction, the ability to actually not have to have seen something before and still be able to operate much in the way that we do. And if you think about human learning, I mean, I don't need to show a child 1,000 images of the letter K before the child recognizes the letter K, which is what current AI needs, lots and lots of data. I can draw one pencil drawing of a letter K and show it to a kid, and that kid's probably going to know the letter K for the rest of their life, whether the K is inverted, whether it's red, green, blue, cursive, Times New Roman, Arial font, even if a cloud kind of looks like the letter K. And then if it spotted a new letter, like a letter P, it might not know exactly what it is, but it would probably say, hey, you know what? I think it's part of that alphabet system you described, and it probably is assigned to another phonetic sound. So humans are able to abstract without needing lots of data. And so this third wave of AI actually has some neat attributes that it's not data-based. And that's pretty huge if you think about the impacts that AI has on the environment with all the training and all the data, all the storage, all the GPU processing, and everything that goes into making a current AI system work. That kind of goes away. It even kind of impacts AI ethics and the things we talk about, because without data, you don't have bias. Without data, you have explainability. So a lot of the issues that we talk about today, privacy and storing of people's data and usage rights, they kind of go away because it's not based on data. So this wave 3 is sort of new, and examples of it are, there's biosystems out there that can actually detect bacteria, viruses, and toxins, even if they've never existed before. And that's pretty important because viruses mutate so fast that having a constant up-to-date database that you can compare is really difficult. So having a system that's capable of really saying, I see a new bug, let me explain the attributes of it. This is its toxicity, this is its viral load, this is its transmissibility, and here's what it means in the class and the family that it's part of, so that humans can start to kind of say, this is something we need to worry about. So anyway, wave 3 really has applications anywhere, because almost every system that's out there today is going to suffer from the lack of being able to abstract. And so, it's something that really applies to any AI system today as that shift moves from the kind of second wave to the third wave.
What are the key drivers behind the rapid evolution of AI? And how can MSPs capitalize on these trends?
It's kind of interesting that the technology has been around and in use for many decades, but what really changed was the key driver was that it was made easy. Generative AI has been around for a long time. I think I did my first generative AI image and video back in 1996. So it's a powerful tool that's been out there, but it was never commoditized and really brought to the user in an easy way that people can use and kind of resonated with them. Most of that has been in the language domain with famous OpenAI's ChatGPT or Microsoft's Copilot instantiation, but they really made it easy, just like a search engine. And so one thing to keep in mind as you start to use this is that, keep in mind it really is still a stylizer. It can create the style of conversational language, but it's not necessarily a search engine. So if you wanted to do creative tasks, like create images for marketing campaigns, it's really great at that because it'll produce all sorts of different types of ideas for you that maybe you didn't think about. And you can ask it to even be in the style of Monet or the style of whatever. You could ask for an essay to be written and it'll give you the format. You can ask for software code to be generated and it will actually generate functions and it'll lay out the architecture for the goal you're trying to achieve. It'll actually do it for you. And so, that's kind of a pretty powerful capability. Now, you have to be cautious that it still is based on statistics and it's creating amalgams from the internet, from all the different input data that's been used for training. So it's sort of a summary, but it might also merge things in ways that could be a little dangerous. And an example there is I've used it by accident to ask for certain mathematical theorems. I'm a mathematician by training. One time I was on Bing asking for a theorem, I just needed to reference it. And by accident, I typed it into ChatGPT. I looked away, and when I came back, there's the mathematical theorem I was looking for. But it wasn't the mathematical theorem. It was an amalgam of math theorems that looked perfect. It had almost all the same words, but there were some key elements like less than and greater than signs that were flipped. It's certain elements in it. And so it wasn't correct. I can't say that generative AI or Copilot did it wrong. They did what it's supposed to do, which is create new stuff, create styles, and wrap something in a way like an essay on a topic, and format the way that an essay should be written, software frameworks that outline, and it does a great job at that. But you have to be cautious that the actual nitty-gritty details within it are still going to be an amalgam of stuff from all over the world. So, you might ask it about heart health, and it pulls from the Harvard Health Letter and the Berkeley Wellness Letter and the Mayo Clinic, but it might also pull from a popular vlogger in the Caribbean who loves salt and recommends that you eat lots of salt for your heart, and maybe that's not the best. So you have to be a little cautious about the details, but it's a fantastic tool for a lot of other creative areas. And I think that fun and creative part of it is one of the reasons why it exploded onto the scene, because people were just so amazed. I mean, even musical groups like Duran Duran, they created an entire video that was generative AI. It was a song called Invisible. You can go look it up. And that was pretty neat. It kind of shocks people that, this system can actually make videos. Now, granted, that was creative, so there was kind of no wrong answer. Matter of fact, the band said that they liked it when it sort of came up with wacky stuff because that was more artistic and creative. But that's really the reason why right now it became so prevalent, is everyone got their hands on it and they could kind of see what AI could do for the first time.
How is Dell leveraging Gen AI within its product offerings and solutions for MSPs?
We are also on a learning path as well. I mean, this technology is not completely understood, but we've really dove in headfirst, and we've created an office dedicated to learning what AI can do for us. We also have an office that is dedicated to what AI can do for its customers. And we've been on this journey as a company for probably about a year now, and we are still learning what you can and can't do with it. We're also have a committee dedicated to governance, because governance is changing really quickly. And that's something that's scaring a lot of the customers, partners, MSPs, that how do we stay on top of it? It's changing so fast. So Dell has actually got a very sophisticated process for monitoring that, understanding it, basically distilling the information from these rules that are being put out there by region down so that we can actually say, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. So I think that's a powerful initial tool that we'll be able to offer to MSPs to make sure they don't misstep, to make sure that they don't deploy technology and violate a rule, because the penalties are actually quite stiff. The new EU AI Act comes up with a, per instantiation penalty, which is pretty monumental. So being able to navigate that is something that we need to understand for ourselves. And that information, I think, would flow down immediately to a lot of our MSP and our partners and our customers to be able to help them navigate that. And we have misstepped, and we've learned along the way as well. We at times deployed some software throughout the company and found that even though we had done our good due diligence, the rules had changed from the time that we first evaluated it. And we ended up finding that there was a violation, which we had to go in and fix the software and before we could deploy it again. So that is something that is, very costly to companies, and they need to get it right the first time and monitor it as well.
That brings us to segment 2, harnessing AI for transformation. Can you give some examples of AI applications that are driving significant value across industries?
In the generative AI space, or even traditional AI, it's really on internal business optimizations. It's these helper tools. And one of the reasons why that is the case is because if you're doing traditional AI, where you're the one inputting the data, you're the one who's asking the question, trying to develop the model, companies themselves internally own that data. They don't have to go out and acquire it. And so it allows them to actually build the models, and they also have the insight and the technical expertise and the business expertise to know when the model is good enough. So often the internal business optimizations are where things happen the most. I mean, here at Dell, we put it into our products. So we monitor our products and have AI running to, for instance, heat management to make sure that the systems are running cool, that they're running quiet, and that means they're less likely to break or have problems. We use it for parts failure prediction so that we can actually estimate that our products, which are out in the wild, based on AI, we can say there's a likelihood that there's going to be a problem maybe with this particular product or this particular region, and it helps us stock our repair rooms accordingly. And that helps minimize downtime for our customers when they have a problem, and helps us actually minimize costs, which we can then pass on to the consumer as well. In general, generative AI has been very helpful with repetitive tasks by freeing up their time. I use the software development. By being able to create a software framework rapidly and being able to then allow the developers to kind of dive in and fine tune, it means they have more time for doing downstream debugging, product enhancements. We've heard a lot about people using generative AI to generate new business leads. And something that's much faster, something that would take a day, now they can do it 5 minutes, because it sort of aggregates information about a client, summarizes it, and allows even real-time conversations with customers to sort of, be more in tune with what they're really looking for. Any type of risk assessment is, again, something that is very powerful to be able to analyze when there might be a investment risk, and identifying early marketing trends and marketing recommendations for targeted marketing is something that it's very, very powerful for. But in general, the ChatGPT is still mostly language-based. There are some organizations that are using the image creation for creating marketing material, real-time email responses, as well as something that people are seeing significant help with. But it usually is kind of right now the manual tasks that are taking up a large portion of people's time, and it's doing those, allowing these people to be more productive and expand what they could normally accomplish in a day. The thing that is interesting, though, is the applications also have to be somewhat low risk, because there are error rates. And because of those errors, because of those hallucinations, and the problem with hallucinations is they sure do sound convincing. Companies are finding that they have to maintain, they're not reducing headcount. They have to keep a human in the loop to basically review everything that these co-pilots are creating. So it's expediting the creation of content with humans still in the loop. It's not a replacement for humans.
How can MSPs integrate these solutions into their offerings?
It's still very much in the exploratory phase. And it's going to really come down to each business with their area of expertise analyzing these tools to find if and where it helps. My advice is to, at this stage, play with it. Play with it and find out how it works and how you may be able to utilize it. Talk to people in your industry that might be using it to find out how they're using it. And it's going to take each organization and company's area of expertise to assess it. No one outside can do that. And I use the example of software development. A year ago, everything on the internet was saying generative AI is going to replace software developers. In these sort of parlor tricks online, we're showing video games being made in 10 minutes just by describing the features. The software developers dove in and used this in earnest. what they've sort of found out is it does a good job at kind of gross organization, macro scale software frameworks. It does a fantastic job actually at that. And sort of outlining how functions should operate. But the fine details are just wrong. And it's actually sometimes harder to go in and then fix someone else's code. So what they've been able to understand by playing with it and by utilizing it is they found the functional boundaries for their area of expertise to say, here's where I can use it, and it's a helper tool. Here's where I need to dive in and have my human expertise take over. So I really, really encourage you and every organization to just start playing. Just use Microsoft Copilot. Look up YouTube examples of how you could use it. Talk to people in your industry and start down that journey, that path. The other thing I will say is start with a problem to solve. Don't assume you need AI. What you actually find is that, there's a kind of a danger when you have a solution looking for a problem to solve. But unfortunately, Gen AI is sort of in that space. We kind of say, hey, here it is, world. And now the world's running around going, well, I guess I need it. I guess I need it. Don't fall into that trap. Start with the problems. Identify the list of the things that your organization needs to solve that are bottlenecks, things you're struggling with, and then just try to solve those problems. If it leads you to AI, great. If it leads you to Gen AI, great. That's something that should come in response to a specific need. And one thing we're seeing out there when we talk to a lot of folks is people are saying, well, I've got Gen AI and I'm going to go try it over here. Well, that failed. I tried over here. Well, that failed. Over here kind of worked. Well, they're just sort of flailing around, and it's just, they're going to try to almost fit a round peg into a square hole. So if I were to advise people right now, maybe play with the tools that are currently out there, understand the limitations, maybe hold off a little bit on diving in too deep until you really understand the problems you need to solve, until maybe there's a little more solidification and understanding of the false alarm rates, how to evaluate them, and kind of who are the winners in this race. And at that point, if you're developing and playing on the side and you understand where it may or may not apply, at that point, you'll be able to identify the proper solution. Maybe it's an on-prem solution because of privacy issues that are important to you, security issues which are important to you, more fine-tuned, accurate results, which you can do by developing things yourself versus using just the tools that are out there. Or maybe what you have out there already is good enough. And so that's where I think it's changing so fast. I would really dive in to understand it, but maybe be a little cautious and make sure you're approaching it from a problem, maybe the solution as well. And governance is changing so fast as well. And these ethics and regulatory issues that, you also want to sort of be cautious about diving in too strongly in one area that all of a sudden you find who you kind of decided to work with, is facing some pretty serious problems. And by the way, just know you are not behind the curve. It is the Wild West out there right now. It costs a lot right now. Starting now to explore you're not behind the curve. You're right where most people are these days.
What industries stand to benefit the most from AI adoption, and what specific challenges do they face in implementing AI-driven solutions?
Since generative AI is really just a stylizer, I kind of keep coming back to that. When it's applied to language, it tends to be very articulate because it's stylized from all the conversational, pretty much English that's out there. It's actually an issue that English is the dominant language on the internet, and so it does a better job at conversational English. But since its output is based on statistically popular language, it's not necessarily focused on producing the most accurate results. And so what happens is that well-spoken characteristic can often fool people into thinking that's more intelligent than it is, and that can be dangerous. And due to the fact that these neural nets are black boxes based on some stochastic approaches, you never really know when or where the errors will manifest themselves until the question is asked. There's kind of no generative AI model resume out there that says, if you use this for this application space, it's going to be 90% correct, 100% correct. And so that's a problem facing the adoption right now. Also, there are a lot of AI scientists that sort of worry that people don't understand really how long it may take and how much it may cost for an application to become technologically and financially mature. A lot of times people want quick ROI. They maybe say, give me, you got 6 months to a year to, implement this. when in reality, there's a lot of applications for maybe 10 years or more. And that can cause some adoption to sort of fall off. That's why most people right now are sort of in that exploratory phase. And they're sort of trying to figure out what is the ROI, and that's hard to quantify. There's also bottlenecks downstream. There's some real applications, as I've already mentioned, of people having improvements in terms of maybe surfacing much more business leads than they were able to before, faster than they were able to before. But all of a sudden, there's then downstream bottlenecks. There's nobody to process those new leads at the speed that they need to actually turn it into a reality. So there's sort of the entire business stack needs to be updated in order to really take advantage of a generative AI and the power that it is starting to show promise for. And you see that actually in some big applications where, there are some actual accuracy issues, like General Motors and Apple both got out of the autonomous driving business because some of the error rates were not able to get them down to a level that meets governance requirements and performance requirements. And even cost issues can come into play. CVS and Walmart, they're getting rid of their self-checkouts because they found that the AI systems and the maintenance of them was actually more costly than just having human checkers. So there's a balance, and there's a lot of learning going on right now. And that's why I kind of come back to play with it to find the areas where it works for you, and then think about it from the entire business stack to say, if I were to improve this segment, do I have the ability to actually turn that into overall better business?
Let's move to segment 3, building strategic partnerships in the AI era. What resources and support does Dell offer to help MSPs develop AI competency and expertise?
My advice to people is reach out to your Dell resources.
You've explained Gen AI and AI so clearly. Where can we learn more?
I would just start with the links that are provided there, and they'll be able to connect you with the right resource to help you on your journey.
Ron, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
And thank you at home for watching. For the channel company, I'm Kenna Johnson.